the car then look very pissed.
Ready, set, go. Coming to you live, it's the Auto Hub Show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
So what would your dealership feel like if your entire sales staff was literally on fire, your sales and service staff? They were nonstop all over social media, completely dominating your marketplace. They could do it in 30 days or less and then continue their education to do it for an entire 6 months or a year. You literally would completely take over the entire marketplace and no one would be able to compete with you. And that's what we can do for you. So when you're walking around your community, whether you're at local restaurants or you're going to the gym, you don't want to be bothered? Fine, you won't be bothered. But a lot of people will walk up to you and say, oh my God, I love your social media. Your staff is amazing. We love what you're doing in the community. We want to come buy a car from you. We want to get an oil change at your dealership. Your community is absolutely going to love you. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. You will literally be all over the place. I've traveled all over North America. I've trained Toyota. I've trained Nissan. I've been to driving sales. I've been to Women in Auto. I get hired as a speaker for conferences at universities all over the country. And I can help change the trajectory of your dealership right now. If you click on the link, you can sign up for a webinar. It's live with me, and you'll learn the 7 strategies that you need at your dealership in order to see that success.
I was at Larry Coleman's seminar. So happy I came. Have such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
Told you twice.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me here. I'm at Larry Coleman's seminar, and what I've found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is, the longer it takes, the more money we spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon, and then the time to line are the most important things that we look at. I'm Mike Burrell, I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
And good morning and welcome. So let's get into it. So go ahead, Jeff. We're going to start with a couple books. The Psychology of Selling and Persuasion by Leonard Moore, Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, and How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. So go ahead with our disclaimer, Jeff.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I guess officially now it's good afternoon for John. Of course, the Auto Hub Show, the guests, the opinion shared today are those of our guests, not necessarily that of Ian Nethercott or Jeff Polo or the Auto Hub Show, but there's something always very interesting.
So we have, obviously, the show today is Salespeople Pay Plans and Overtaking 2023. We will have our month-end show. So Happiness Is It Really Possible will happen early next month. So stay tuned for more details on that. And I wanted to go over this. I'll let John explain it. But if you are looking to look at activity-based pay plans, John Latka has a solution there. But this is a quick slide talking about how that works. And I'm sure John will go more into it as we get into the show. We are going to be doing some live shows going on. So SEMA, I'm going to be there next month, and then we'll be at Used Car Week in Scottsdale, Jeff and I together. SodaCon, I believe, is going on later this month, but I'm sure if you're going to be there, you can hit up Larry. He's going to be there in person. So let's get into it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, good morning, and this is something long coming. You know, the dealers everywhere talk about it's all about the sales. It's all about the sales, and you know, we hear all sorts of crappy stuff going on, and I actually saw a post. I'm a member on Facebook of the dealership. There's something in one of these groups on Facebook, car dealers Facebook or something, and a woman posts something on there that says, you know, hey guys, can you help me out here? She says, I've been doing this about 6 months. My schedule is Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sorry, Monday to Friday, 9 to 8 p.m., Saturday, 9 to 6 p.m., and close Sundays. We can't go get a lunch break, etc. Is this normal? And of course, this had about 300 comments on it. And then she, further on in her post, she shared about how her pay plan worked, and you know, how they got a percentage, but if it was less than $1,000 gross, they got a smaller percentage because they didn't do their job right. If it was this and that, if there was a customer comeback up to 6 months, they could get docked. And it was very interesting. So today's show is very timely, in my opinion. It's always timely. We talked about this, but you know, basically, it's salespeople. You know, are pay plans really important, or is it just because we're looking at order taking? They're just lucky to be working. And our first guest, in order of tuning in this morning, just not of importance, but we love him anyways, is John Latka of Automotive Business Solution in that massive metropolis of Halifax, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Canada. John, could you introduce yourself and just answer this question, please, for us while we're doing it. It may be a little off topic, but with the way the market is and with the way that it seems to be going, especially with strikes now, are salespeople really of value? John. And by the way, so later on or whenever, you can talk about that lovely pay plan structure you had there.
No worries. Hopefully we'll get to it. Listen, certainly salespeople are extremely important. We're in a human-to-human business, really. And, you know, a little bit of my background. Of course, most of you already know, I've been in my own business for 23 years, doing consulting and training and ongoing relationships with dealerships, helping them obviously improve by way of employee development and business development. And excuse me, to that end, of course, we've also developed software to help them along the way, which includes an alternative pay plan, especially for those who are new to the business. In terms of salespeople being important, I just heard the story over the weekend. A customer bought a vehicle online. It was delivered by 2 drivers, one who drove the vehicle to the place, a couple hundred kilometers away from the dealership, and the other person, of course, with the vehicle that would bring them back. When it came to the CSI, the customer rated the dealership with a 5 out of 10. Reason behind it was the vehicle was delivered, the vehicle had some complex technology, and there was no one there to explain it to him. Above and beyond that, he felt shortchanged because when the vehicle was delivered, it did not have a full tank of gas. It did when the trip started, but not when it got to his door. So if there was a salesperson involved in this, I think it may have gone a little differently. What do you think?
Interesting. I agree. I think it's interesting that I guess the person who delivered the car was probably a delivery member at the dealership or a lot staff member, not
just
the person.
Drivers.
Yeah.
You're just
Interesting.
You know, it actually tells us something very interesting here. The auto industry is moving forward in technology and moving forward in all this stuff, and there's still a push for remote deliveries and all that other thing, which frankly, I go back to the 80s when I had I was in the business office and I had a salesman actually driving a car, or he was delivering cars about 1,000 miles away from here, 1,600 kilometers away. He literally was on the road. We gave him a one-ton truck with a camper, and he drove throughout northern British Columbia and sold vehicles. We delivered them remotely. Nobody cared about the CSI if it was Ford, so you know. But interesting, you brought up a good point. The CSI is outdated. You buy an EV, what are you going to put? Did you have a full charge? It's very interesting, but it's also a failure of the dealer, in my opinion, because first of all, I'm sure they didn't pay a salesperson. I'm sure they paid a remote sales specialist a fraction of what they would have paid a salesperson. And I know when I sold, hey, I'd have driven 6 hours to go get a deal and do a delivery, no problem. It would have been my pleasure. But you're right. I believe there's great value. Our next guest is the famous Doug Reeves, A to Z Sync. I have trouble saying Z, us Canadians, eh? And Doug, would you mind introducing yourself and then answer the question? With the crazy market, with the world of order taking, and even frankly, the Stellantis and Ford folk are going to start running out of stuff if the strike continues. What value really are salespeople?
Well, a great question. Doug Reeves with A to Z Sync. We've been in this business over 10 years, and to answer your question, I would say yes, definitely. Salespeople are very valuable. Our feeling is, our goal is to change the customer's perception of buying a car at a dealership, and the salespeople are integral to the success of that. It's interesting. John, your point about the technology, I had a meeting with some high ups at Volkswagen recently, and one of the things they were trying to address was just that. They want to make sure the salespeople have enough time to actually explain all the technology on the car, and speeding up sales is part of their mission, is to do just that. But I think more importantly, salespeople have the opportunity to differentiate that store from everybody else. And when inventory does come back, even after this strike, that's going to be important. Customers are going to want to gravitate to the store that resonates with them, and the salespeople have a huge role in that. So I just don't see there ever being a time where we go away from salespeople. It's just that how do we coach them up to do the right things?
Well, it's an interesting point that I've mentioned it before. You brought up Volkswagen and coaching. And I talked about it many a time. A good friend of mine went to go look at a Volkswagen ID4 at a Volkswagen dealer, and the salesperson couldn't get the charging cable disconnected from the car. So therefore, he couldn't drive it. And, all the stuff that the salespeople rattled off, everything, it's got this and that, and dual autonomous control, regenerative braking, and all this other stuff. And granted, he was new. He probably 5-6 hours in the business, but yeah, there has to be that salespeople have to be of value. I completely agree. Ian.
Obviously we got Gail on today. Thanks for coming on, and we got Peter and Don as well. But the big question I always want to ask is on the pay plan side. I know there's different ways of doing pay plans. And there's different ways of structuring pay plans. When I was in the business, it was based on volume with some other criteria. But I guess my question is, over the last, call it 5 years, has there been a significant change in pay plans, especially as we've seen more profit for the cardio? And how is that impacting, salespeople, but more importantly, retention and performance? So maybe we can start with John, that since you had a big thing on the compensation piece.
Well, things have changed, since COVID in terms of pay plans. I know a number of dealerships, general managers, and that have in fact changed their structure because the previous one would have had salespeople making a lot of money, and they felt that, that maybe wasn't deserved. In other words, a position is only worth X amount of dollars. So let's figure out the percentages that are going to give us that dollar value, whether it be $60,000 a year or $80,000 a year. There are so many different variables in pay plans out there, and some of them are so complex you need a Philadelphia lawyer to figure it out. So there have been, many changes. There are dealers that are using tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. There are, the standard commissions, you get 20, 25, or 30% of the gross. But then there are the lot packs that vary. And earlier on, of course, it was just mentioned, in the pay plan, sure, if something goes wrong with that used car that you delivered and we have to fix it, a percentage of your commission is going to come back. So there's all kinds of changes that have happened, and chances are there are more to come. And when I get the opportunity, I'll share my pay plan in terms of the activity-based pay plan, and let you know how that originated and how it works.
I guess the question I have for everybody is, what should the pay plan incentivize? I mean, should it simply incentivize, for lack of a better term, tearing a customer's head off and making as much money as they can, or should it incentivize something else entirely different? I think pay plans in the past were the former, but maybe people are getting more progressive now.
Well, I'd say that, what we need to focus on is two things: the employee experience and the customer experience. And if we take gross profit out of the equation in terms of a pay plan, and we make it about the sales process and looking after the customer, not only will we sell more vehicles, but salespeople will be compensated, I would say, very fairly, and be able to build up a book of business over time, so that their focus is going to be on looking for repeat, referral, and appointments.
Here's something very interesting I have to comment on. So the old-fashioned way, we incentivize somebody a percentage of the gross. We de-incentivize, some places did, on a problem with the car. None of these items have the salesperson cannot affect any of this in any way, shape, or form. They don't decide on the value for the selling price of the car for most dealerships. In many cases, they don't know the cost, so how can they increase profit? Many cases, they can't trust the dealership because they don't know if they've gone and created inventory adjustments while they're doing the deal. And it's that. And my last comment on this before I leave it to you, because this is your show, is I'll never forget a dealer that had the last of the Viper ACRs. And they had the car 50,000 over MSRP. And the salesperson's commission was $1,000 max. Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, they were getting 9 points on the car as it was originally, plus 50 grand. And the salesperson
robbing your salesperson, robbing them. That is horrible.
Yeah. Exactly.
But there's also dealers that have played around with this flat.
We're not, Don, what I like about your thinking is that a pay plan should encourage a salesperson to develop his or her skill sets, so that we have career employees. And right now, all the pay plans are pay plans to encourage a stopgap job until I find something else that more meets what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, there's even been dealers that have played around with a large flat commission structure. This was years ago. I think there's still people doing this where it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what you sell the vehicle for. It's XYZ amount of money, which I don't know if the jury's still out on that. There's lots of talk when this came about, and this is years ago now, but there was dealers that were saying instead of paying that, call it $100, $200 flat, it was a $500 flat or whatever the number was for them. And there were pros and cons to that as well. But I think that the best dealers, and obviously everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, incentivize not only the selling of the vehicle, but the treating of the customer. And more importantly, that experience and retention. So I think CSI is part of that. But also it's generally saying, okay, we're going to have a multi-point plan, which isn't just based on strictly profit, because that's only one component. Right? Like if airline people who sold airline tickets were only worried about how much money they made on the airline ticket, you probably have a bad experience more often, I would bet. Right. So I think some of that has to have multidisciplinary thoughts. But I mean, obviously, Gail and Peter. Oh, go ahead. Virtual hand. Go ahead.
Well, gentlemen, thanks again for putting out a great show. This is a topic that is probably one of the most discussed topics in the automotive business. Doug and I have had many talks about this on
disgusting.
Discussing how do we change a pay plan to become a long-term career pay plan rather than a short-term plan. John and I have had talks about how to turn around and incentivize work rather than incentivize results. And the last 3 years of this business has thrown everything into the air. That we're challenged with, you name it. Lori Foster, which a number of us know on LinkedIn, put out an amazing post about pay, and wasn't just to the salespeople, it was the dealership as a whole, where right from the receptionist to the car wash to you name it, and right all the way up to the stakeholders. And what is a realistic pay? What we have to do is we have to focus this on not having to have an actuary design the pay plan, but make it simple, make it realistic, make it a drive to the business rather than a last chance opportunity. And let's start recruiting the people that should be in the business, not the people that are in the business as it is. So pay plans are very, very, how would you say, effective on driving and retaining people. And we know that retention is a challenge right now.
Well, I have a question for Gail. John, or Ian, maybe you mentioned earlier, there's stores that actively advertise that our salespeople aren't paid a commission. They're paid the same regardless of the car.
Yep.
From a social media standpoint, is there more traction with entities that promote that type of a structure in the consumer's eyes? Have you noticed any difference in that? Because I know that when I see it on a website, to me, it's a little bit less, it's disarming. I'm like, oh, I like that. This guy's not, they're telling me point blank, I'm not incentivized to rip your head off. Have you found that from a social media standpoint, Gail?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if actually any of our clients have just like a flat non-commission based structure. So I do know that most of our clients do have are incentivized and are paid commission structures. And so when they are doing social advertising, they're like, gotta get my friends, gotta get my family, gotta get in the community. Like, I need to hit my objectives. Like, a lot of them will even post, like, help me hit my 20 car objective to get bonus this month. Mm-hmm. And they'll literally post that on social and ask their people in their community to help them. So I don't know if any of our clients, and we work with people all across the US and Canada, I don't know if anyone's just a flat-based structure. I have not seen that a lot lately.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This was a number of years ago, but there were a couple dealers that I know that were doing this. I'm not sure if it survived the pandemic, but they were really pushing this as, don't sweat, the pressure because, we're compensating people no matter what you buy. It'll be the same. And they'd even advertise that, I think, in terms of what the amounts were, I think. So it was definitely interesting.
Ian, that interview or that video you played before this, what we started, and one thing they said is respect the customer. And I would think that respecting the customer would fall in line with, a flat pay plan. That it's about you, it's not about me. It's funny that the car industry is, from what I can tell, it's the last bastion of barter. It's kind of like, I've got this, I'll trade you this for what you have, and let's talk about the money in the middle and all that. And it's kind of archaic when you think about it. I'm kind of curious if, and this is for another show, but if more dealers will gravitate to just a one price philosophy, and let's just take this all out of the equation and make it easier on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a winning combination. But the funny thing about it, and I worked for a store where I managed salespeople that had this commission structure. So their commission structure was X. So they made XYZ amount of money no matter what the car sold for. They would beat me up on price as a manager just as much as if it mattered to their pay plan. And I remember talking about it going, what I'm selling it for is irrelevant, dude. You're going to make X. So like beating me up, like that doesn't help you. Like it doesn't impact you at all. So, but the behavior was so ingrained. And to your point, you don't see the salesman at the Apple store going to beat up the manager. Oh, can I get a better deal on this TV or whatever, on this computer? Like that doesn't happen. So it's kind of interesting, for sure.
Well, I think we have to look at something. We have to make a decision in our industry. And what are we? Are we professional businesses? Are salespeople professional salespeople, or are they the kid at Best Buy that has a chance of making better money? And until we do that, we have a problem. And we've talked about this. We have, in the States, there's what, 330,000 dealers? I don't know. How many new car dealers there in the States? Ian,
15,000 roughly franchise dealers and about 120,000 independents.
Yeah,
Sorry?
like 19,000 or something.
Franchise is down. It's about 15,000 because of acquisition. Total number.
No.
Yeah, there's 120,000 independents and roughly
It's
15,000.
150,000.
Well, when you combine the two, yeah. When you combine the two, 120,000
Chevy
plus
dealers.
15,000. That's roughly the number.
The point being is there's gobs of dealers and there's 3 times as many pay plans. And, so our salespeople, we want them to be professionals. We want them to be long-term. We say we want them to be long-term. And we got a big problem because there is no consistency. There is this goofy thing, like Peter posted the comment there, he just said, is we have a minimum, then we should have a maximum. And you know something? I completely agree. However, let's make it doable on that Viper ACR. Give them $5,000 to sell the car.
But
Fair.
Jeff, I said the dealers have a minimum and a maximum. It's not a fair entity to the salesperson. And as Gail said, stealing from your salesperson. If you're going out and you're going to overlist the car, then that salesperson who sells it, who has the incentive to sell that for that dealership, should get paid on that overlist. I am not an advocate for anything being sold overlist because all you're doing is ostracizing your customer base by doing so. You look at J.R. Toothman Ford in the States, one of the biggest Ford dealerships went out and said no overlist on anything that we have, regardless of the pandemic or not. And they looked at it and said, we're going to lose our customer base if we do it. So I don't believe in it. I'm an advocate against it, and I don't think we should ever remove a maximum on a deal.
Auto's an interesting one. So there was an article recently on the Nelson Automotive Group. They're in Oklahoma and Tennessee. They're a client of ours. Their philosophy, amongst other things, is the bulk 95% of all the pay that everybody gets is salary, and there's a very, very small component that's incentivized based. And their philosophy is, and I agree with it, is we're trying to develop professional car people. People, give them a career, and as such, there's a standard of performance that we expect, and we'll pay you accordingly. And if you can't meet that standard, that's fine. Then we'll find somebody else who does. But they treat it more like a corporate type of a scenario, which I think is a great idea, because in the end, then it's like, hey, I'm fairly compensated for what I do, and I have a set of expectations that I'm supposed to deliver, and they deliver on them. I mean, it's totally outside of the box, but I think it's a great idea.
And that's why the dealership is so successful.
Right.
When you
Not
have a
to mention they use A to Z.
Yeah, when you got more customers than inventory, it's a tremendous thing, because then you're not taking advantage of them, and I'm sure they're not one of these people that rapes and pillages either. Although I have to admit, you get that one unicorn that comes in, a Raptor Bronco. Nothing wrong with putting it in the shop and putting a 6-inch lift on it, and 42s and other stuff before you put it up for sale and ask to move for it. But to ask to move for it because you got one, I don't know. I think we're just building that up in the mind of people. So moving along. So our model for over 100 years in this business is a private enterprise, that it represents a brand, and in some places there's 4 or 5 brands under a single rooftop. And with sales team and fixed ops and your local dealer who sponsors your baseball team or the local wine shop, depending on the brand, how much longer can this model exist? How does it have to change to survive? And we are talking about salespeople and pay plans, but the reality is when you've got these models that are set up now like Tesla and Rivian and Lucid and whatever that are they're actually moving more to dealerships and they're changing their prices left, right, and center, but their people are not salespeople. And how much longer are we going to survive like this? Well, how do we have to adapt? How do salespeople have to adapt? And Doug.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think the model is going to last for quite a while longer, and I think mostly because when EVs come out, it kind of it resets the whole table. If every dealership's going to have a slew of EVs, and you're going to have a vast majority of customers that don't understand them, they're still going to need to have a place to go and people to talk to ask their questions. And I don't think just going online is going to suffice, let alone explaining how the dang car works. So I think the model will survive at least another 15 to 20 years. After that, it's hard to say. By then, it could be to the point where I'm just going to order it online and ship it in, and I'll look for an Amazon experience. Thank you.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned something very interesting. As I think about this, when Ian and I did the Lucid review, and we went in, and I'd actually walked into the Lucid store separately, and Ian did separately before we came together. The first thing the guy said is, "Hey, I'm here to answer questions for you. I'm not here to sell you the car. Don't you worry. I'm not a car salesman, but I'm here to answer your questions." And when they pick these things up, I have not taken delivery of the Tesla, so I can't tell you how crappy the experience is. But you have a person there telling you something to do, but I'm sure the sales representative sitting in front of their computer at the Tesla store isn't getting more than $20 an hour, if that. So that's an interesting thing. John, you've been quiet for a long time. You've talked all over you.
Well, that's because you haven't asked me to speak. I certainly think the model is going to be around for a long time. And to Doug's point, I think pay plans, developing people, hiring the right people that you can develop are going to be extremely important. And I think we should be paying people on process, on effort. Certainly dealerships should have performance standards in place. Dealerships that I've worked with over extended periods of time, one of the first things we did was put in minimum performance standards, expectations. And then what we did was we trained, we coached, we mentored, we counseled people to ensure that they hit those standards. And we made it clear that, if in fact you can't maintain standards over a period of time, we have to come to an agreement that perhaps this is not the profession for you. But we certainly wouldn't throw people to the curb. We would work with them as long as they wanted to work with us to ensure their success.
That's interesting, and maybe I can ask Gail a question on that. So, Gail, I'm you're going into dealerships. You've got a range of ages and sales staff, be it from Gen Z to baby boomers, and they're being asked to do, obviously things that maybe they're not comfortable with, be it social media posting and promotion and all this kind of thing, versus years ago when they're making phone calls, I guess. What is your thoughts on that as a standard now for that salesman having to do, or salesperson having to do more than they've ever done? terms of technology and promotion and everything else. What's your thought there?
I actually do think it should be a standard that part of your job description is to use different social media avenues to build your brand within the dealership brand. So the world we live in right now, everything, like your brand online means so much, and your sales productivity is reflective on how you build your brand online. Now, you don't have to be like, you don't have to have fancy videos, but like a simple video, I'll give you guys an example, a simple video saying, this is who I am, this is where I work, and this is why I work here. Hey, if you ever need to service or sell a vehicle or buy a vehicle, like come to me, I'm in your local community. I just want all my friends and family to know where I work. So that one simple video, and that's an example that my friend Kevin told me he did last week. He got 2 service appointments, 3 car sales, like just from that video, because he switched dealerships. So he wanted people to know, hey, I love my old place, but this is where I'm moving. And I want you to, I feel like it should be a standard. How do you not, if you're proud of where you work, how do you not tell your friends and family on social where you work? Like it, I don't know. There's so many things that I think should be standards. That's like a whole nother, maybe that should be another show.
Well, Gail, that this goes back to the old days when salespeople wouldn't keep their business cards on them when they weren't at work because they didn't want to tell people they sold cars.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to tell people where you work.
If they're proud of where they work, that's the question. Are they proud of where they work?
Like I've always been proud of the guys I worked for in retail. Like I was like, come to Flemington Car and Truck. I love these guys. Like I love working here. Like I would have never left that dealer group. And even when I worked at Viato, like had I been allowed to post on social media about Viato, I would have bragged to everyone about it. I think maybe there's a lot of people that aren't proud of what they do. I don't know.
Well, it goes back to what Doug said earlier, which is a stopgap road because I'm selling cars. How many hundreds of people have all of us interviewed that said, why are you looking to get in this business? Well, I've got a degree in zoology and ain't no zoos anymore, and I couldn't get a job, so I figured I'd sell cars.
Right. Right.
It's very true.
Yeah, Doug, I mean, you're doing the same thing in terms of that you're, obviously trying to get dealers to adopt a new process end to end, which is really customer centric, and really saying to a car salesman who maybe was comfortable with the CRM to a limited degree, and now they're going, okay, I want you to do all these things. What response are you getting from dealers who, they're getting these staff members who have to suddenly do a lot more? Like, what do you hear?
Actually, the way we set it up is imagine you're a salesperson and you get to have your own business within the walls of the dealership. Okay. So you're going to handle a customer from start to finish. They're your customer and it's entirely. And the dealership is going to provide you with inventory, infrastructure, and administrative support. But all you have to do is just keep doing what you're doing, and they will keep helping you in any way you can. That resonates with about 85% of the salespeople because they're going, I love the idea. Because now I can be proud of the career. I'm not a car salesperson. I'm going to concierge you all the way through. I'm going to be with you before, during, and afterwards. And I'm building my business, and everybody around me is going to help me build my business. So it actually, it's while it seems imposing when you first think about it, once they realize the simplicity of it, everybody's like, I love this. Let's go. This is great. So
you just created a great idea, Doug. You just created a great idea. I'm going to throw this out. What do you think about incentivizing somebody to do that? Saying, hey, so-and-so, you're out there, you are concierging yourself. You are offering something to your customers. You're doing a hell of a job. Here's what we're going to do for you. Because what we do now is the people that do it are on the standard plan. Whatever that dealer's plan is. They're just a standard plan, and maybe they might get a wrestling belt, something like that. That's Ian's favorite thing. But
It's a Friday.
Wrestling,
what
Bill.
about somebody that the dealer has seen doing this? And I will make a comment about that in a minute, because I have something a very interesting viewpoint on that. Is what about if the dealer or the manager has seen somebody doing it, that they say, hey, so and so, I was gonna say buddy, but we're being sexist now. But it's just saying, hey, you're doing a hell of a job going above and beyond what's going on. We're gonna pay you X because you're just doing that. You're being an ambassador for our business. You're helping our service department, not just because you have to, because they never do, because they have to. But that's a very interesting thing. A next level representative. I think that's awesome.
Well, and you think about that, if the dealership was really smart, then they'd sit there and say, hey, I'm gonna link you up with Gail. I'm gonna help you build your business even more. She's gonna teach you about how you can market it via social media. I mean, Gail, when dealers reach out to you, is that what they're encouraging? Is say, hey, we want you to help our sales team grow, teach them, or is it more at the corporate level?
No, we teach the salespeople. So our best example was Step One Automotive Group in Florida. We taught 150 salespeople how to brand themselves online, and they dominate their marketplace. Like, no one can compete with them. I'm not even kidding. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And the CEO, he's not there anymore, but his name was Fernando. He let me do a launch event with all their staff, and it was a 2-day event. And he's like, guys, you're all entrepreneurs. All of you salespeople at my dealership are entrepreneurs. You can market however you want on social media. Just be professional. Gail's going to give you all the tools, techniques, strategies, roadmaps, everything you guys need. And they literally for the last 4 years have taken over social media. And every salesperson brands themselves online. It is really that was my best case study.
Well, and what's cool, what you're showing is what we've believed all along. Listen, the dealership's experience is their brand, and their brand is more powerful than the OEM's brand. I think, in my opinion, a dealership's individual brand and how their customer experience is more powerful than an OEM's brand. And now, if you take it down to the fact of a salesperson being able to do that, this is what I offer from an experience. Here's what I'm about. It even gets even more finite, even more localized. And it's like a dealer should capitalize entirely on that. If they would just focus on that, that's what's going to drive customers.
Well, look at
each salesperson. So we, granted, this got loaded into VIN Solutions manually, right? So you get your lead off social media. The salesperson takes full accountability to load the lead into VIN Solutions. But on average, in each store, there was at least 4 or 5 salespeople that were getting an extra 5 to 10 car sales a month.
And what did
every single one of their stores.
What did it do to their turnover?
They had no salesperson turnover.
Their
salespeople for 4 years. I barely ever saw a salesperson leave that company.
No, there you go. I mean, Jeff, to your point, if they incentivize the right things, and Peter and I have talked about this forever, they incentivize the right things and you develop their skills and they had their own business, like you said, an entrepreneurial type, a situation, why would I ever leave?
Right.
They're not the best of every world.
Those salespeople made so much money. Those salespeople's paychecks, sometimes they told me how much money they made, and I was like, wow. Like, I didn't make that much when I sold cars.
So here's one thing that I've always been a big proponent of. As Doug says, you're a business within a business. You're getting capitalized and everything else by the stakeholder. So why do we not have business plans, detailed business plans with performance standards, with objectives, with everything else for each individual, and then coach them to achieve that and have regular performance related leadership meetings with them to teach them how to build their brand and build their business. If we do that, we're going to revolutionize this business. We got guys out there that understand the 8, and I'm going to use Doug's company, the A to Z, mentality where we're start to finish. We are the liaison for you purchasing your car, taking delivery of your car, and servicing your car moving forward. You call me. You don't call the dealership. You call me, and I'll look after you. I retain that customer. I look at long-term customer value, and I look at it as a career, not a job. Job is just over road. We all know that. And we want it as a career. We want people to be incentivized to come and choose this opportunity of working in this industry as their first choice, not their last resort.
But also look at guys like George Serglu. I mean, we've had him on the show. Not only did he get interest from dealers all over his region, he got interest from the manufacturer going like, this guy's a little bit crazy, but maybe he can teach us something, right? So, I mean, it was very simple. He was just promoting what he did every day in his own unique way. Happens to be a Greek guy in the Greater Toronto area, but he was just doing videos because he enjoyed doing it. But more importantly, he wanted to share what he did with people. And I think a lot of the challenge isn't just from a structural and performance point of view, even though I think that's important. It's a lot of people in the car business who don't really want to share what they do. I have no idea why, but at the end of the day, I mean, that I think is the biggest hurdle is getting, talking to people who work in dealerships, as Gail does and other people do, and say, listen, like, you sell cars for a living. Are you proud of what you do? Yes, I am. Well, why wouldn't you share that, right? You don't see people in the investment industry or banking or life insurance sales or any other sales who don't do that.
I didn't interrupt you because they are successful and they don't want other people in the same dealership to be successful sometimes. Where you have exceptions to this is where you have dealers that create teams within a dealership, and each of those teams compete against each other, and they have individual and team goals. That's where it's successful. That's usually where it starts in dealerships where they have sales and service BDCs. Each one of those people have a set of goals to achieve, and they have team goals as well. And usually in those stores that become more and more progressive, you have 3 or 4 sales teams on the sales floor. If they're the bigger, they have 6 or 7 teams on the sales floor, and they have 4 or 5 individuals and a closer. In those situations, they're closely monitored, and you can see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the ones that are doing better, the dealers are using the techniques and their skills to grow the business, and the ones that aren't doing so well, they teach them the better way to do it.
It's interesting, Jeff. It's like we've come full circle with your question. So are salespeople valuable going forward? Yeah, because they have the opportunity to do everything we just talked about. And if it's properly executed within the walls of a dealership, that dealership will thrive. And if every dealership did it, the industry thrives, and there's not as much, fear of outside or the OEMs going direct, because it's like the customers are going to say, no, I like going into stores.
Yeah.
It's about the experience. I agree with you. People like to come into a store where it's pleasant and it's an exciting event. When Gail and I worked at Flemington Car and Truck Country 15, 20 years ago, it was an event. People didn't leave the dealership.
Oh yeah, people loved coming in to hang out, and like the kids got monkeys, stuffed animal monkeys, and there was we had fun. Like, people actually locally would come hang out at the dealership. And so when I was a sales manager there, when I walked in a restaurant, the gym, the bank, everybody knew me, and they were like, oh, you're that nice lady that sells Mazdas at Flemington Car and Truck. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Come buy a car. It was fun. That's how it should be.
It's true. The minute they knew you worked there, you were special. They took care of you. If you were at the dry cleaner, you're buying shirts, they knew you because first, everybody in the place wore a white shirt. You didn't wear blue, you didn't wear green, you wore no other shirt if you're a male. It was white. You're like IBM there. That was the standard.
And it's funny you guys bring that up, but it's like when you have the opportunity to buy a car, most people I gotta buy a car. This is gonna suck. But shouldn't it be, I'm gonna go buy a car and this is gonna be fun? I mean, 20, 30 years ago, buying a car was a big family event. They all went down, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be so much fun. We're gonna look at all the cars, yada, yada, yada. No, it's not. It's got to get back to that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, there was
And you can still have a digital experience and then do what Doug says. And then when they make the connection to the human being, that human being provides validation and that experience. Like there's no reason why that can't be done. It's the leadership in the store that needs to make it happen.
Right,
Bingo.
right.
Bingo.
I worked with a friend that had a pile of toys in his drawer for kids.
Always
Yeah.
did.
Don, I still have my Flemington monkey in my car. I've had it in my car for 20 years. And it's gone from car to car to car to car.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a video this morning. I think it was the CEO of Auto Canada, and he had different members of his team from all over their different locations. And they're, I think, one of the few publicly traded auto groups. Anyway, they have locations in the U.S. And I thought it was interesting because there were like these five pillars, I guess they were trying to do. I haven't had a chance to watch it in detail, but it was interesting because it's I was surprised that pillar number one wasn't customers. I think it was like pillar 3 or something, which I thought was kind of interesting. But at least they're trying.
Rolled out a new program, which I found absolutely fascinating. And they're taking a single dealership and calling it the Lighthouse. And
Interesting.
and they are going to pilot that dealership with innovations that are not normally developed in the car business. And they want to see how that dealership will perform as they roll out new retailing experiences in this industry. So, and they're calling it the Lighthouse Project because the Lighthouse guides the way. And it is, I was absolutely incredibly interested in it. And it was just released that they were doing it on LinkedIn, and they had their entire leadership staff from all their dealerships at the event, not just the one.
It's very interesting though, because that group in itself does not have the most stellar of a reputation for customer experience.
Really?
They are literally one of those that if you don't talk like this and you don't use the word pal and you don't offer them a smoke, they don't want you.
Maybe they're seeing that they can't do it anymore.
Well, it might be the fact that they're starting to take on more high-end German stores, and therefore you have to go. I'm not going to do my German accent. That'll be
That'll be the end of that.
Ian, can you throw up that pay plan that I sent you?
I can actually. 1 second.
Yeah,
This is actually very interesting. I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, while he's doing that, I put that question up as, who's really selling the car is when you come in is, like the 6 position sell. Some places still teach it. There's one group out here that they do walk around competitions, which is really very cool, except for the fact that the customer says, well, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong on your viscous coupling because you use a Siemens-based viscous coupling instead of a GmbH or whatever it is. And the salesperson's going through the same thing for everybody.
Here's a great one when we talked about something like the walk around. Volvo actually had a fantastic system that the customer actually online chose what they wanted to talk about and learn about, and they would fill it in. And when they got to the dealership, it would show up on the salesperson's tablet on exactly what their questions and their interests were, and you could run through, and it would tell them exactly as a customer how long it would take. I want to talk about the navigation system. Oh, that takes 7 minutes. This takes 4 minutes. This takes 2 minutes, and they would know exactly how long they would be in the dealership for.
Although, Peter, I have
it up here. Let me
do
just
about things that are before their time. Who remembers Saturn?
share that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Salespeople at Saturn had a clipboard, which countered the clipboard customer. And they had a string of questions that they asked the customer to tell them how they wanted to go through the process, the salesperson.
Right.
So that's way before its time.
So can everyone see it?
Yeah.
So John, maybe you can talk a little bit about it. We're a little tight on time, but go ahead.
Yeah, of course. You leave me no time. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, thanks, John. Yeah, the show. No, I'm just kidding.
I think we got it, John. Thanks.
All right, perfect. So listen, the way that this came about is a number of years ago, I actually had a dealer principal ask me, John, what is it we have to do to get salespeople to do what we want them to do? So I said, well, why don't you pay them for what you want them to do? So I came up with this pay plan and built it into our software. And basically, salespeople get guaranteed X amount of dollars per month. And what we guarantee should be a livable wage for whatever area that the dealership is located in. So some of the dealerships that we had guaranteed a minimum of $3,000. By coming to work with them, you would never make less than $3,000 a month, regardless of the number of sales that you did. So the pay plan started with the software in terms of there were certain data that we wanted entered into the software, so let's pay them for entering the data. One of them is appointments. So when you enter an appointment and it shows up, guess what? It goes into your pay. If the person that you made the appointment for shows up, you get paid. If you sell the vehicle, then there's a flat fee that you would get. You log a walk-in into the system, you get paid. You follow up the person that left without buying, convert them into an appointment, you get paid. You set up a referral in the system, you get paid. You get paid for the critical steps like demo drives, trade appraisals, proposals. So every step relative to the sales process has some form of incentive in it for the salesperson. And above and beyond that, at the month end, if they hit their minimum standard volume expected in terms of sales, and let's say hypothetically that it's minimum 8 sales that particular month, if they hit the 8 sales and on appointments their show ratio was at least 66.7%, they get a bonus. If their closing ratio is at least 50%, they get a bonus. If their walk-ins closing ratio is at least 35%, they get a bonus. If their referral shows up, of course, they get a bonus. The referral is sold at 75%. I'm sorry, I should have looked at the slide. So if referrals are showing up at 75%, you get a bonus. If the person buys at 75% closing ratio, you get a bonus. If in fact your demo drives, your appraisals, your proposals, if all those are at 80%, you get a bonus. If your overall closing ratio is at the end of the month 50%, you get a bonus. You can then get volume bonuses for hitting different tiers, whether it be 9, 12, 15, 20, etc. And all this can be set up within the system. So a salesperson on any given day can just hit pay plan and they'll see how much they've made for that day or that week or at the end of the month. For the dealer, it's really simple because all they do is pay them the guarantee every 2 weeks or whatever the frequency of their pay plan is. And at the end of the month, they look at what the salesperson earned and pay them the difference. The beauty of the pay plan is it focuses on people actually following a process and putting in an effort. There's less pressure on the salesperson to sell the vehicle. The idea behind it is we want the customer to get a great experience. So if they follow the process of making sure that the person gets a demo drive, that the person gets their trade appraised, that the person gets a proposal in front of them, when all this is done without the pressure of actually having to sell the vehicle, in essence, the salesperson ends up selling more vehicles. because they're gonna make money whether a vehicle is sold or not.
That makes a lot of
It
sense.
makes a lot of sense. If you focus on the behaviors, then the metrics will follow. And I think that taking your pay plan and taking it a step further and then rewarding them for follow up, even post sale.
Well, the follow-up component is in there because if they're following up and converting people, so for example, a prospect that they follow up converts into a walk-in or into an appointment, they get paid for that.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on a whole nother show, and I'm sure we're at the edge of the thing, but I like the idea of, yeah, reward the behaviors, the metrics will follow. Peter and I have talked about this ad nauseum, right, Peter?
Yeah, it's we look. One of the greatest frustrations as a manager in the business is what is your staff doing? We know that on average, a salesperson works 1.5 hours of their 8-hour shift. That is their actual productivity. If we reward behaviors rather than results, then we are in a situation that we can push a customer experience that is rewarded, and also a dealership experience as why you want to work for this company. So it's behavioral pay plans are the future.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
So final thoughts.
They're running out of time, and I wanted to make a final comment to everybody before they make a comment. One thing that reminded me of this is we have people setting pay plans that don't need any money, that are quite well off, have an nest egg, they have assets, multiple assets. In many cases, they got assets that they got assets to cover their assets.
Right.
And they're setting plans for people that need to pay their bills. This is just like politicians setting up things. There was a post here in Canada about how most politicians in Canada they're talking about housing. Housing's a big issue everywhere now. And affordability and everything else. And yet most politicians are part of the landlord class.
Right.
And how is it they can do things or understand people? And I'm not a socialist by any stretch of the imagination, but how can they do things, and this is on both sides of the coin, to help the normal people if they have no idea?
Right.
So, really a pay plan is something that should be set up by somebody that has an understanding of what these people need and want out of their lives versus an understanding what they themselves need and want, which is probably one of the biggest problems in the car business anyways.
Great point.
So with that, I thank everybody. Final comments from our guests.
I'll start. I agree with you. I think any pay plan that's developed should be developed in conjunction with the person that's getting paid. And I think dealers should start thinking outside of the box, get away from what they've been doing forever, and be willing to be different.
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. I think it's really about not only that, but maybe ask your staff. I mean, what motivates one person may not motivate another person. And I think that's the real missing piece here, especially when you look across generations. I think what motivates different generations and individuals is different.
It takes work to develop things to help people do things. And, frankly, when you're too busy, I hate to say it, when your sales manager is too busy doing paperwork and not managing sales, how can they help them? When your general manager is too busy micromanaging, how can they help any department do anything? So we're dealing with a bigger fix here.
Yeah.
But I agree. It is generational. Where we were baby boomers, we put up with that because we were used to working all the hours, wanting to achieve, wanting to get all the money, wanting to get all the accolades. Now the different generations have different aspirations, different things are bothering them or not bothering them. As the millennials and the Gen Zs get involved, there's more friction, and they want more free time. They want to have more impact in the dealerships, and they don't want to wait 20 years to be a manager. They want to wait 10 years to be a manager. They want to have impact now, and they want training. They want training programs. They want a relationship with the managers. In the past, you're lucky the manager came out of the office and said hello to you sometime, right?
Exactly.
John, final comment.
Well, you know, when it comes to the industry, I think one of the struggles, of course, and I'm sure we'll all agree, is hiring people, not just hiring them, but retaining them. So why not give them a pay plan that they can come into the industry? We can take our time in terms of developing them and give them a pay plan that they'll recognize that by following the process, getting paid for behaviors in the long run is going to give them a huge income potential because they can increase their income year after year by getting repeat business, referral business, building the relationships, but continuing to follow that process that's so vital to get a car deal. But without having that stress of, oh my God, I got to sell a car today because my rent's due.
By the way, I have to acknowledge that, John, this show was your idea, so thank you so much. It was a great topic. I thank you. Ian, I'll leave it to you to close the show.
Thanks very much for all the thoughts and input. I agree. Process and questions and listening will change behavior and results. But more importantly, I think it's really about changing it all running in the same direction for the customer. You got to make a living wage, and more importantly, you got to love what you do. But if there isn't customers, there really isn't any point. So really, for me, it's about a combination of all those things driven around customer experience. And I think customer experience is the key part of success in 2023 and beyond. And that's it for me.
I have to make another comment. I'm sorry. Next week is our second advisory panel show. The topic is secret. Shh. They will find out the day before, or maybe the morning of, so they don't prepare. This will be fun. And it's a goofy month end because month end falls on a Saturday next month for this month. So we're doing it a bit early. So thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Oh la la. What?
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel. It's just us, Ian.